Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at some tips for playing Saratoga, some trends that you want to be aware of. In this video, we're going to be talking about jockey and trainer trends. We've got a lot of stats to go through in this video, so those who like to dive into the stats, this is the video for you. And speaking of stats that you might want to look up, you want to get your formulator PP set for this Saratoga meet, you could do so by buying one of these packages that we got available at shop.drf.com. You get a discount on all 40 days of past performances for the Saratoga meet. You get the all access PPs, which include not just those formulator PPs, but Timeform US as well. If you buy the larger package, you also get access to the clock reports and betting strategies. That's clock reports for all 40 days of the meet, betting strategies on Saturdays, and bundling all those things together, you can save up to 72% of the value of everything. So you want to check those out at shop.drf.com. Mike, it's always a discussion every year, the hot jockeys, the hot trainers coming into the Saratoga meet. Let's start with the rider discussion, and we'll go right into a graphic talking about the jockeys that have done well at Saratoga over the past several years. I pulled up stats for the past 4 years, going back to 2021, kind of ignoring the COVID year, and compiled the leading jockeys from all those seasons, and you can kind of see some expected names at the top of these lists. I broke them out by dirt and turf because I do think you see some differences on both surfaces. You obviously tend to get some bigger prices on the turf, so you'll see some higher ROIs naturally. On the right-hand side, IRAD tops both lists, Mike, but he hasn't exactly been the best bet at Saratoga going over the past few years.
It's not a good position for IRAD to be in just because he wins so many races. He rides for all the top stables. He's generally riding the best horses, no matter what kind of race it is. And people gravitate to that. They know that he's got a real chance to win just about every time. And so his horses do get overbet. It's something that you want to keep in mind. You know, listen, I don't really have a lot to say about this topic. I think, as you know, and maybe some other people know, probably my least favorite topic to talk about as far as horse racing goes is who's riding the horses.
Yeah, I mean, you just have a colony of top riders at Saratoga, so you're going to get good trips from most of the jockeys that you get on, and it's really just luck of the draw about where you're coming out of the starting gate and how the races unfold as to who's in the right spot at the right time. But you do see some differences on both sides of the list. Obviously, some expected things. Luis Saez, higher ranked on the dirt column than he is on the turf column. He's known as more of a dirt jockey. Kind of interested with Flavien Prat, Mike, just the disparity in ROI between dirt and turf. Not a big shock that he's a jockey that gets a lot of opportunities on the turf, riding primarily for the Chad Brown barn and known as such an expert turf jockey. But the ROI being as close to IRAD's level as it on the dirt is a little bit surprising for Flavien. I wonder if that's going to be changing over the next couple seasons.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just noticed that too for the first time. That is a little bit surprising. Listen, not surprising that his horses, get bet though. I mean, he's very clearly one of the, top 2 or 3 best riders in the country. He's another guy who's just rides nothing but good horses. They're always live. And, he deserves to get those mounts because he's really, really good.
Yeah, in the right-hand column, I do just want to point out Jose Lezcano. I think for a long time, Mike, he's one of the most underrated turf jockeys on the NYRA circuit. Doesn't get a lot of opportunities during the summer, but he can boot home some big prices, and we've seen that happen. Same thing with Dylan Davis, who's got high ROIs on both sides of the dirt-turf binary. Let's stick with this jockey topic, Mike, and we'll move on to another graphic that our producers, Bobby and Lucia, kindly prepared for us, looking at the top jockeys from the recently completed Belmont meet, but not the traditional Belmont meet because we kept moving around through May and June. But these are stats compiled from the Belmont at the Big A meet, the brief stand at Saratoga during the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival, and the recently completed 4th of July races at Saratoga that technically wrapped up the former Belmont meet. So putting all those things together, Mike, no surprise the 2 names at the top, Flavien Prat and Irad Ortiz. But Flavien decisively overtook Irad at this recently completed meet in quotation marks. And kind of those ROI trends that we saw from the prior graphic continued here, and maybe even more stark with those top 2.
Yeah, that's kind of an amazing right there. I mean, again, it's not surprising that Flavien's really quickly closed the gap on Irad as far as, the number of winners that he's going to start riding here because he's in all the good barns as well. But yeah, it's pretty surprising that you get that kind of a return on investment just betting Flavien's amount straight up. That is not a number that I was expecting. But there are no really other surprises to this list, David. I mean, these are very well-known riders. They've been very good riders for a really long time, and they're going to win the majority of the races on this circuit.
Yeah, and you do have some new jockeys coming in for the Saratoga meet, like Luis Saez and Jose Ortiz, who are not shown on this list. We'll see if Tyler Gaffaleone makes it a little bit later in the meet. He's returning from injury currently. So some of the jockeys that have high ROIs on this list, maybe you won't expect that trend to continue once we get to Saratoga proper. Kendrick Carmouche, a jockey whose stats sometimes drop off a little bit at Saratoga. I mean, you see Christopher Elliott towards the bottom of the list. Pretty impressive for an apprentice to have a positive ROI at a top meet like this, Mike, but it typically is tough for apprentices to achieve that same level of success at Saratoga. So won't be surprised if you see some drop off there.
Yeah, it'll be hard for him to keep that momentum going, but good for him. He had a pretty solid meet there at that recently concluded Belmont meet there. Maybe the standout stat on there, David, is Johnny V there with the huge ROI. He's not riding as many horses as he used to, but that guy can still get it done. He's great.
Yeah, it's funny. That ROI, I was looking it up. It's almost entirely from that Belmont Stakes Racing Festival. He had like a $5 ROI during that 4-day stand. He was riding out of his mind that weekend. We'll see if it can continue since then. And also Junior Alvarado, a nice performance. But the Bill Mott's barn has been pretty hot lately, and he is certainly tied to them. So their success kind of intertwined. Let's move over to the trainers side, Mike. And I want to start the discussion of top trainers by talking about the elite level, the graded stakes races, because I think we kind of know in this day of the so-called super trainers, you got a small handful of barns that win a lot of the top races, but this graphic really makes it clear is there's quite a disparity between who's first on the list and who's 10th on the list in the number of wins. No surprise, Chad Brown at the top.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he has, most of the best horses anyway. I mean, his stable's just loaded, not only for turf, but also for dirt. And he's got tons of 2-year-olds, and that's really important at Saratoga. And then maybe more than anything else, David, this meet's really important to him. He really points for it. He runs tons of horses here. And a lot of these other guys, they just, not only don't they do that, they just don't have the firepower to do that.
Yeah, the positive ROI for Chad is a little bit surprising because you know that he takes a lot of money in these graded stakes races. That's kind of the narrative around Chad, that he's overbet during the Saratoga meet. The stats say otherwise. I mean, his performance matches the expectations and sometimes exceeds it. A 247 ROI with a 177 horse sample is pretty impressive. And I think a lot of that is a function to the fact, Mike, that Chad sometimes starts multiple horses in the same stakes races. And we've seen the bigger prices win quite a lot of the time. So that's always going to inflate those statistics. Steve Asmussen does well. Kind of the surprising one that jumped out at me on this list, Mike, is the ROI for Todd Pletcher. 83 cents on a $2 wager in graded stakes over the last 4 years. Just surprising with one of those names that's generally considered to be one of the top trainers during Saratoga.
It's very true. And it has been sort of noticeable too, even without seeing that stat. And that stat, when you look at it on your screen, it just sort of drives it home. But it's sort of been noticeable, I think, if you're just handicapping the races every day the last couple of years at Saratoga. He just doesn't seem like he's as loaded in these stakes races as he used to be. And it's reflected in that stat. But there are some other guys on there, really sort of surprising numbers as far as not only, the number of wins, but the return on investment too.
Yeah, definitely getting down towards the bottom of the list. Mark Cassie's really ramped up his Saratoga operation over the years. Wesley Ward, always dangerous when he ships into New York. Jack Fisher, maybe not a name that's so familiar to those that watch racing day in and day out. He's a jump trainer, but something you want to be aware of. He's had a lot of success in those handful of jump races they run every summer at Saratoga. Well, Mike, being ROI focused, let's move over to our final graphic we'll show for this video. And that's just trainers that have had success at Saratoga over the past several years. I pulled a list of trainers that have at least 15 wins between 2021 and 2025 and kind of pulled out the highest ROIs and pulled out the lowest ROIs among that group that has 15 wins or more. And on the left-hand side, Mike, if you're somebody who's followed Saratoga recently, I don't think it's a big surprise to see Phil Bauer at the top, because he is a trainer that has just come to Saratoga meaning business every year going back about the past 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, he's always been live. He's not going to run a ton of horses at the meet, David, but the ones that he brings here, they're super well meant. We talk about Wesley Ward a lot too. Like, he's a guy, he'll spend more time at Saratoga than any other track in New York, but he's not going to run a ton of horses up here. Every horse that he brings is really, really well meant as well. It's one of those things you just really want to pay attention to. I mean, we know who the guys are who are going to win the majority of the races, but that's not the same thing as making money betting on their horses, because, Chad Brown, Todd Pletcher, Linda Rice, they're going to win tons of races up here, but their horses are going to get bet.
Yeah, you see Chad Brown not on this list. He was kind of somewhere in the middle between these two. Same thing for some other top barns. They win a whole lot of races. But let's move over to the right-hand column, Mike. I mean, some surprising names here because you think about Jeremiah Engelhardt having a lot of success with Saratoga over the years. Maybe that's kind of going back to the pre-COVID era. But, I mean, over the last 4 years, the results, especially on the wagering side, being friendly towards horse players, hasn't really been there. George Weaver, a trainer for a long time, had a positive ROI at Saratoga. That hasn't been the case recently. And even Shug McGahee, a trainer who has kind of dialed down his New York operation recently, just has not been booting home the prices at Saratoga over the last few years.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, just like anything else, though, David. I mean, these are guys that used to win a lot up here, and you know what? Horse players are smart, man. They catch on to that kind of stuff, and they start betting. They start betting your horses, and your ROI is going to go down no matter what you do. Jeremiah is a guy who I still have a lot of respect for. I still always take a second look at his horses because he's always been good up here. He did have a couple of years there recently where, for whatever reason, he just wasn't winning races. He was back on track at the last meet, though. He's a guy who's excellent with 2-year-olds. He's excellent with first-time starters. He's excellent with dirt sprinters. He's got tons of New York breds, and there's going to be a lot of races for him to win going forward up here. You're right. Shug sort of dialed it down a little bit. You still want to pay attention to some of his first-time stars, especially on the grass.
Yeah, Mike and I will be filming 4 parts to this series. There will be a positive stat coming for Jeremiah Engelhardt, but stay tuned for the 2-year-old segment when we get to that. So that's another video that'll be on the YouTube channel. Mike, before we wrap up our trainer discussion, I mean, some of the top or the barns that are going to generate discussion coming into this meet maybe don't have the stats yet, but feel like they're on the rise. I'm thinking of names like Melanie Giddings, who had some surprising results last summer. Amelia Green, who's recently gone out on her own and has turned some heads with her performance at Aqueduct recently. Will Walden, who always comes into New York, seemingly his horse is running well. He's had a lot of success in Kentucky. Actually, that ROI stat, the trainer that was second on the positive list was Metken Cantermachi. I took him off because he's not training currently, but his brother Ilkai's had a lot of success recently. So he's another one that I kind of want to watch coming into Saratoga.
Yeah, that's definitely a barn that I have had my eye on too, coming into Saratoga. The Cantermachis, man, they've been good for a long time anyway, and they've sort of moved it around as far as who's named on paper in the form. But no matter who it is, their horses run. They're excellent off the claim. They can go long or short on dirt. They're going to win a lot of races up here.
Yeah, we'll be interested to see how many of those barns that have had success coming in from Kentucky come here this year. The operation in Kentucky has really been ramping up over the past few years. Ellis Park, the racing product there, has been getting stronger. I know a lot of barns are maybe content to keep horses at Ellis that they would have brought to Saratoga in the past. But you generally do see more of those Kentucky shippers coming in once we get into late July and August. Maybe not so much at the start of the meet the past few years, Mike.
It's going to be interesting to see, how much they supported it, because you're right. They have options back home now that they don't really have to ship up here. The money's good down there and the racing's getting better, but there are still guys, outside of the top names too, in that regard that you want to really pay attention to. I'm always looking for Al Stahl to come up. He won't send a bunch. I'm always looking for his horses when he runs up here. Eddie Keneally's another guy. He won't run a ton, but his horses are well meant when they show up at Saratoga. You're not going to have that many opportunities to bet them, but you want to pay attention when they're in the entries.
Yeah, and you want to also check out the stats. I mean, we are 2 guys that like to handicap using those formulator statistics, and I pulled some of the statistics we looked at here from Formulator. Just check out those Formulator subscriptions that are available, because there's just an infinite number of parameters you can look at when you're assessing these trainers that you might not be familiar with. So make sure to check out those packages that we showed at the top of the video, and stay tuned for our other videos on betting Saratoga. We've got one on the 2-year-olds, one on the betting side of things. We already did one on how the different courses are playing, so make sure to check out all of those on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel.